And we're back. Today we're not doing anything exciting or fun. We're just going to go over the general condition of the car in detail. We're going to go and actually take a close, in-depth, detailed look at what we're dealing with moving forward. For a little while, the fun stuff is going to stop. We're not doing a whole lot of engine stuff. The engine's about 90% complete. We still can't get a transmission rebuild kit right now, so now we're going to move on and just go over what we're actually dealing with the car as far as paint and body work. We're going to try to air up the tires that are on it that haven't had air in over 20 years, and we're going to try to lift up the rear end of the car, see if the rear end of the car is frozen or whether or not it's going to spin freely. If it is frozen, we've got to figure out whether it's the drum brakes that are frozen or whether it's the rear differential. So join us. Here is the front end of the car. We have the radiator support. The fenders are just sitting there. They're not bolted on. The front end of the car is on jack stands. We have our old nasty front bumper here from the car. We're going to attempt to clean up and attach someday. The majority of the work under hood is going to come from the surface rust. You can see where we've gotten the grinder out and taken a little bit off to see what it can look like underneath. The good news is everything is surface rust. We've checked everywhere, and despite it looking pretty nasty, just a few seconds with the grinder reveals quality metal underneath. Nothing is rusted out. The shock towers, or the strut towers rather, are in good shape. Front radiator support's in good shape. The firewall's in good shape. Everything here can just be cleaned up, primed, and painted, and that's going to be one of our next steps. There's no actual rust in here. That's just dirt and grime. Everything in the cowl is rust free. And next we're going to try to lift up the back of the car and see how the rear end's looking. We'll crawl under, look at the actual subframe of the car. The subframe should still be primed and painted and in pretty good condition. And we have drag race springs with an airbag. They're sitting under here under our cross member, so that is cool. That is money saved because those were barely run back in the day. This is the current state of the wiring harness for the car. We have a headlight harness, we have an engine control harness, we have maybe brake control, I don't remember. But this is our wiring harness right now. I'm sure this will only take a few thousand hours to straighten out and test and hook up. So after a nightmare of trying to get this thing in the air, had an issue with the jack, we had an issue with the jack stands, the tires are completely flat, they did not hold any air, they were just rotted and gone. We finally got this thing up in the air. Got it on some jack stands to check the rear end. I forgot that I removed the shocks, so I kept jacking things up and they weren't moving properly. It was kind of a clown show. It was embarrassing. I'm glad it wasn't videotaped. But everything underneath the car actually looks fairly solid. And we got the best news of all. After realizing that the emergency brake was on and panicking when this wouldn't turn, I then remembered I'm supposed to know a little bit about these cars, and I went and I took the e-brake off, or the parking brake off, and the rear end does turn. Here, hold that, buddy. Hold that on the rear end. So that is the old tire on the other side hitting stuff. That's what's making all that sound. The rear end actually turns fairly smooth. And oh my God, I don't think the brakes are frozen. I think we can actually get the drum brake pad off, which is insane. And that's a drum brake, Christopher. Christopher's too young to have ever seen a drum break, but this is how a drum works. I must have done a brake job fairly recently, right before the car went on the shelf, because these don't look bad. They're not as thick as they should be, but everything looks pretty good in here. The front brakes actually look brand new. So I must have done some maintenance right before I broke it. So pardon all the dust and stuff flying everywhere, but it is filthy in here as far as just old crap and garbage, cobwebs. There's the rear differential. Oh my God, we have exhaust hangers under here. I can't believe it. We even have drive shaft bolts. I can't believe I put them back in the right place. That blows my mind. I assumed I was going to have to buy new drive shaft bolts. But as you can see, the bottom of the car is rust-free. A lot of oil from oil leaks, a lot of transmission leaks, a lot of nastiness. I also forgot I welded in subframe connectors at some point. I kept jacking up part of the car and the whole car kept moving. That was fun. Then I remembered I had subframe connectors, so the whole car is very stiff. And we found our steering rack and our front spindles for our suspension. So this is the underneath of the car. This was good news. This was a pretty big victory. Not sure why I don't have a gas tank. I thought I should. I think I have one somewhere. I'll keep looking. But that's the underneath and the rear end of the car. And here we are with the interior of the car. As bleak as it looks in here, this is mostly just a couple of decades of collecting dust in a dusty, dirty garage environment. It's mostly just cobwebs and dirt. The floor pan is actually really clean, completely rust-free, just like the bottom. Probably because I lined it with something. I don't remember what it was. It may have been Rhino liner back in the day. But the floor is clearly got a black aftermarket coating on it. The floor looks good. Now the roll cage was bare steel. I was supposed to paint it years and years ago, but it is just surface rust. I did take a grinder to it. I was able to grind off rust in a few spots. It's just some surface rust. So we'll have to grind down the entire roll cage, and then we'll have to prime it and paint it also, just like any other bare metal. The original seats are pretty filthy, but they're actually functioning. And the best news, I found a gas tank. So, back seats are not where they belong, but they are in the car. Not that the back seats are probably going to go in it, because if you can't tell, it's a little bit difficult to get to the back seat with an 8-point roll cage in the car. But the 8-point roll cage, along with the subframe connectors, are holding strong. And I think that's fast enough to go less than 10-second quarter mile in drag racing. I think that'll take us into the 9s, or at least 1050. I'm not sure what the standard is anymore. But anyway, it's faster than we're going to go in this thing, assuming it ever runs. The roof is rust-free. It's actually in really good shape. That's just old headliner glue. So somehow, some way, after sitting in this garage for all this time, for the most part, the car is still rust-free. And when I say rust-free, I mean that nothing is corroded and rotted out with rust. Yeah, I coated the entire floorboard all the way back. The car is rust-free. It's in really good shape. Even the top of the hood, which is notorious for rotting out, doesn't have any rust anywhere except surface rust on some of these bare bolts. So, as horrible looking as it is, as bleak as it looks, it's actually in great condition. It's just going to take a whole lot of elbow grease. Alright, there's the inside. Alright, so I just discovered something. I haven't been this excited in a while. Look at that. Can you see it? It's a bolt. And there's another bolt. And there are 2 bolts on the other side. And down there, in our suspension cross members, or our spindles, our control arms, bolts. I can't believe it. My 20-year-old self actually put the bolts in a place we could find them. They were cleverly disguised as bolts in their proper place all these years when I just assumed that they were long gone. I haven't been this excited in a while. Those bolts are outrageously expensive. And now it appears that we actually are capable of mounting the front cross member of the car back on the car now and possibly getting the front suspension completely on and make this car roll. It blows my mind. That is the most exciting news I've had in a long time. Of course, we need to take this all apart and we need to pressure wash it and we need to prime it and paint it before we do that. So there's a lot of body work left, but I no longer need to spend a couple $100 on specialty bolts. I'm truly excited. All right, so that's it. That is the condition of the car. That is what we're working with. I'm still searching my garage. I'm finding random parts here and there among gym equipment and among regular tools. I found a bucket of bolts earlier that excited me. I'm not sure what they are, but they probably go to the car somewhere. They probably do something for the car. There won't be a lot of videos coming up. There'll just be some before and after pictures because most of this from here on out is just going to be, it's going to be very tedious. It's going to be stripping rust, priming, painting. Nothing really exciting until we get to the transmission. Right now, the transmission is on hold indefinitely till we can find the rebuild kit that we want for the price that we want. So, you got anything, Junior?
No.
No. All right. Thanks for watching.